Do you think there are any fields in particular that will benefit first, or categories like CPG, tourism? Are there any kind of markets that you feel are like a good first movers, second movers, however you would kind of say it, to use this kind of technology? Do you see opportunities certain places versus others?
I mean, clearly there's training and there's that kind of stuff that we get. But are there any other places that you're sort of seeing going, this is going to be ripe for
our beloved end consumer humans we were talking about?
Yeah, for that side, yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, for the business world, I definitely think it's industry.
Right.
But for the general public, I do think when things reach a point to where the cost is at a place to where it would make sense and people see the value, I do think it could become a useful tool for learning helping you get all sorts of things done. But to be honest, I really struggle thinking about where it gets a foothold in that space first with the general public. Yeah.
But it's interesting because you talk about it really as a functional tool, and that's great because it's not a story. It's not storytelling. It's not it's not that kind of. You're seen in a whole different way, which is super interesting.
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's one thing that I've always been when we've talked to clients about doing projects in this space. It's like the example everybody points to is like the AR example is of course Pokemon Go, and I feel like that's been the standard in a deck for about 10 years now. It's like just like Pokemon Go, but instead of that, you're doing X, Y, and Z, and it's about geolocation-based whatnot. But again, the use of AR there is a very light, and I haven't seen like anything with the awareness of like from a consumer perspective of like a Pokemon Go so far, which is kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, I could see a practical use kind of building on that, just like exploring a new city. Mm-hmm. And kind of this, we've all had this experience. You're in a place that you've never been before, and you're trying to find your way, and you're kind of heads down in your phone. And I could see there being value in kind of this heads up exploration. But to be honest, I get a little unnerved by it sometimes, thinking about where that could go. Where if you allow the human experience to be mediated by technology. Like I like the idea of putting on AR to help me do a thing and then take it off and just be here with people
and live. Right.
Yeah. And live and be a person.
Well, that's interesting because like we've talked about pros and cons of that from a city perspective before. It's like, it'd be cool if there were no more physical billboards, but if you wanted to put on glasses to see that, maybe your data, with the new data stuff, you would get incentivized every time you get a view, it's you're in control and you kind of make the city more beautiful that way. But to your point, that's going to be a fascinating area of like sci-fi, right? It's like, when do you even know what's real and isn't real? And it could destroy your brain. Like this definitely could be a Black Mirror episode, right? Where it's just like, well, now if you got the contacts in, which some people think is the dream, like I'm going to have these AR contacts, then you're going to not be able to distinguish what's being put in front of you versus what's in front of you. So it seems like that's kind of some of the ethical stuff that everyone's going to have to eventually get to, which is fascinating to me. But.
Yeah, it's a tricky space to navigate. It reminds me of this. There's this video that came out, I think, in like 2016 called Hyper Reality, and I can't remember the artist's name who made it, but it was like a proof of concept that of a fully augmented world where it starts out, you're on a bus and you're seeing stuff everywhere. And when I saw that, I thought, oh my God, that feels like a dystopia. I mean, and honestly, that's until we kind of figure out how to pivot off this advertising model that funds everything, that's exactly what it's going to be.
Right.
And I don't want to live in a world of constant interruption.
It's funny because it's the same thing we talk about with companies now. We say either you're interrupting people and trying to force a transaction, or you're somehow contributing to their life, and you have to make that choice as an organization. Which path are you going to take? You're just going to jam them with messaging, or wherever you can, and including augmented, and sort of or are you going to like figure out a way you're going to contribute to their life?
Yeah.
and show them how to do something, like you said, show them a way to do it, then take the tools off,
That's interesting. Yeah. Because you're defining like augmented reality. There's two big chunks. It's like doing anything good or bad, right? It's like we're going to augment it with a meaningful story or experience, or we're going to say, go eat that Italian beef for the guy who paid 50 cents for you to get that ad. And then you have a totally different, it's the same problem the internet faces, right? It's just, you can use it for good or for bad, but it's going to be more difficult and particularly could be much more disruptive than ever because of that immersion.
Well, what's funny about it, though, is if you think about it, it's all starting like your path, Joel. It's like I'm lightening cognitive load. I'm helping people accomplish a task, right? But if you build out what we just talked about, you're building out this bigger thing, and at some point it actually increases the load because there's so much stuff in your field of view that it's like it's increasing the tension in your noggin to make stuff happen because you don't know where to decide. You have too much choice.
So I'm curious for like, I'm gonna throw out like a brand or two. It's just like if you had a brand focused on millennial moms, you would say maybe the opportunity more is to help provide like, this is lame, but like doing more like helping them prepare dishes and like doing things like that might make being a mom easier. Or if you're a sports brand, you could help activity. Yeah, like, if you're a sports brand, you could help someone like perfect their golf swing, right? Like those to me, that's one thing. My dad's 84. He's a YouTube, like it's a problem with him on YouTube now because my mom's like, he just sits there all day because he loves learning about golf and he's loved golf his whole life. He would pay so much money for a AR tool because of that 3D space. It's so difficult. Anyone who's played a sport at a high level knows it's so difficult to do that in a 2D sense. It's just impossible to get that, which is why you get trainers, everything else. The ability to, get that feedback, like you're saying, and stand inside a swing or something like that. That seems like places where if you've got brands with connections to those like that's where they can start adding some immediate value as kind of helping even consumers kind of acquire those skills. It's a more natural, seems like a more natural transition because like you said, it's more session based. I know what I'm doing. I know it's being augmented versus kind of changing the day-to-day world.
Well, I think that's it. There's a beginning, middle, and end, right? Yeah. That's what you're sort of, we're going to go in, we're going to do this thing, we're going to teach you how to do this better, and then it's over. And then you got to try it yourself without the tools.
That's interesting. Or even the tools could scale back how much they're helping you and kind of as you kind of evolve through. Have you seen any examples of like one thought in athletics of like people like competing with celebrity? Like, have you seen any good like kind of gamified examples? Because that always seemed like an interesting thing to me. If you start getting for training things like that, where it's a little bit more like kid focused, or you could see that kind of translating to that audience because you do have a little bit of the ability to kind of make it more immersive in a video game kind of sense.
LeBron teaches hoops.
Yeah, that like master class comes to
augmented
to Magic Leap.
Yeah.
That
would be fantastic. I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but yeah, I think this is a super rich territory to explore. I mean, I think what you guys said is right on. It's like, how are you helping somebody do something?
Yeah.
There's just this hyper focus on how do we extract value? How do we, and how about just give and see what happens? How about
yeah.
Try to enrich someone's life and see what happens.
What?
It's not going to sell any hot dogs.
What? I can't sell my potato chips? What?